Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Alice Heiman. Hi, Alice.
Hi.
It's great to have you on this podcast. We are going to have
so much. Yeah,
you're welcome. We're going to have a fantastic conversation about systems and, in your area of expertise, which is sales. And we're going to talk all about it and probably how systematizing sales can help entrepreneurs and business owners excel and scale. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, but let me introduce you. Let me give you the bio. Let me tell our listeners about you and who you are and what you do. So you are a Chief Sales Energizer, and that is a fantastic title for you because your energy level is amazing. So as Chief Sales Energizer, you internationally known for your expertise in elevating sales to increase valuation for companies with B2B sales that have exceptional growth potential. So you're working with companies that have exceptional growth potential, which I totally relate because we love working with companies that are fast-growing companies that are lacking consistency and making sure that they have consistency. So we are definitely aligned there. And increased valuation is something that I shared. I also share that passion. You know, we do it through processes. You do it through making sure that they know how to sell and they have a selling machine there, and you're the Chief Sales Energizer. So we're going to talk about that as well, like how doing internal, like all those internal actions that you are doing and you're taking actually increases the valuation of the business. And you spend your time strategizing with CEOs, company leaders, and their sales leadership to build the strategies that find new business and grow existing accounts is your passion.
Yes.
And your clients love your spirit and the way you energize their sales organization. And you are the host of the popular podcast, Sales Talks for CEOs.
Absolutely.
That's fabulous. So, Alice, tell us, I always like to ask this question, although probably you've been asked that many times, but how did you start your career? Where did you start at, and how did it evolve to where you are at right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I'll keep it short because it can get kind of long, but I actually started out going to college to be an art major, like the farthest thing from a business consultant that you can imagine, right? So I went to school for art. And then all of a sudden, I think my sophomore year, I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to make a living being an artist? And so I had a mid-college crisis, and I switched my major to education. Somebody said, well, you like kids and you like art and you could do art and kids. And I was like, okay. So I studied education and got into a very specialized program for special education and learned that. And I did indeed teach public school for 13 years before I got into business. So it wasn't the usual route. I got catapulted into business because my father, Steve Heiman, and his partner, Bob Miller, had a company called Miller Heiman, which those of you who are listening who have been in the sales world a long time, you're familiar with Miller Heiman's strategic selling, conceptual selling, large account management, and managers coaching processes. So Korn Ferry owns that company now. But that was where I came into the business world and the world of sales. I was basically catapulted into it from being a teacher. So that was a lot of fun. I spent 3 years in that business helping my dad and stepmom, who at the time was the CEO, to grow the business, and they wanted to exit. So I learned at a very early age in business how to exit a company, which is why I know that the valuation needs to be high. And so I got to work through that whole exit process and learned how to sell a company. And in fact, it was the first sales training company ever sold to a private equity firm. So that was very interesting as well. So I learned a lot about private equity. I learned a lot about exiting a business and what it would take. So from there, I started my own company, which is the company I still have today. That was 1997, a long time ago. And I have graduated from working with Fortune 500 companies, which is what I did at Miller Heiman. I taught sales training, I trained trainers, coached, and did all of that work with the Miller Heiman sales processes. And then when I went into business myself, it was the dot-com time, and all of those senior executives from all those big companies like Hewlett Packard, AT&T, Fidelity Investments, GE Capital, all my clients from Miller Heiman were all going into these dot-coms, these little startups, all with all this venture money, and they needed to figure out how to start up a sales team from scratch. Well, you know that you need systems to do that, right, Addie?
Yes, you do. Absolutely.
And I did not know how to do it, but because I'm sort of the how-to girl, I figured it out and built the systems they needed to grow a sales team from scratch and grow their sales. So it was a lot of fun. But I learned that working with venture capital was not for me, a little bit too volatile. So after several years of doing that in many, many companies, that a lot of them didn't make it in the end, those dot-coms. But then I started working with more mature but smaller companies, founder-led companies. A lot of them were bootstrapped and some of them had some private equity backing or family backing. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today, which is working with the CEOs of technology companies that have a business-to-business complex sale. They're not startups, they're more mature. They're usually 5 to 10 years into their business, and they're usually at least 5 or 10 million into their revenues, but sometimes even bigger. So it's a lot of fun.
It sounds that way for sure. So that would be like companies, let's say, for instance, that are implementing ERP, right? That would be an example, or any software or any technology
A lot of
solution.
them are so it's interesting, right? Because when they're young and they're growing, like any company, a lot of it's organic and there aren't a lot of systems in place. But then they start to need customer relationship management software, CRM. They start to need tools for their salespeople, tools for their marketing. If they're in any kind of manufacturing, they need an ERP system, right? The accounting, programs. Sometimes those goes with the ERP system. Sometimes it's separate, right? And a lot of times these systems don't work together. And all of that, believe it or not, can prevent sales. So it's something that I dig into. Now, my focus isn't on their operations or their finance, it's on sales, but every department impacts sales, right? Nobody can sit around saying, oh, there's low sales. That's the sales team's problem. Yeah, no, it's the whole company's problem. So we have to get it organized.
Well, that's true, because you can sell, but if you can deliver, then it affects the sales, and it's also affect the morale of the salespeople, right? Because you can have like the best strategies and trying, but then if you can deliver what you are selling, if you are promising something and then it doesn't happen, then it's a problem, and it's hard to then continue with the sales.
Either you can't deliver on time, or you deliver poorly. All of those things impact sales, right? So great that we send salespeople out to bring in, the new business and continue the existing business, but everybody in the company has to perform to their best level in order to retain those customers, which is critically important. And, I know you're all about systems, Addie, and I'm telling you, if these companies don't have retention systems in place, it is a nightmare. And that's one of the things I look at first, like, who are your existing customers? What sales are coming from them? What sales could be coming from them that you're not getting? What are your retention rates? Are they successful using what you sold them? And when we look at that first, right, then we can straighten that out, put some process in place, system in place for them to improve their retention. And then that becomes a feeder for more sales, because the existing customers buy more, but they're also willing to say how great you are and introduce you to others who can buy from you. So it really gives you a push when you need more sales to ensure that your existing customers are happy and successful using what you've sold them. And you've got that process down so you don't have to worry about it. And then you can go back and sell them more and get referrals from them.
Absolutely. So Alice, let's talk about that. What are some successful steps that need to be in order to have a good, successful retention system?
Yeah. So important, Addie. Really, when you think about it, retention starts on the day that you close the deal, right? And even before that, right? So I think a lot of people think of sales with sort of a funnel or a pipeline, right? So we have marketing way up here trying to get interest and get people to want to talk to salespeople, and then we have conversations with salespeople, and maybe let's say there's 100 conversations with salespeople, and out of those 100, maybe 50 want to continue the conversation, and then maybe 20 get to the point where they're getting a proposal, and then maybe 10 to 18 of those buy, right? That's a typical, right? Well, and then we stop there, right? Oh, we close the deal, great, fill some more stuff in and keep trying to close deals. Well, if you turn that on its side, my good friend Jaco van der Kooi has a bow tie looking. So just think of a bow tie, it's skinny in the middle and wide on the ends, right? And so now you are feeding this funnel from this side, right? And everything's coming in, and the close is in the middle, but it's not the end, right? From there, now it branches out big again, because now is where your customer retention, upsell, and referrals come in. And so if you think about what are the steps, then you have it really even starting before you close the deal. So here's one of the things I think is really important that companies should do. They should get their customer success people involved before the deal closes. Now, with most products today, there's some sort of onboarding, especially in technology where I live most of the time, with software or SaaS, software as a service, or even with some other products. We've got to deliver them and then train people how to use them and then get user adoption, right? Now, even if you think about something like heavy equipment that people would buy from you, you still have to deliver it, teach them how to use it, and make sure they continue using it, right? So I don't care what industry you're in, there's some aspect of that onboarding, training, and user adoption. So if you bring your customer success people in early in the sales cycle, not at the very beginning, but especially when people are starting to say, oh yeah, we really want to buy this. It's just a matter like, let's get the price right and let's get all the other details. Well, people forget that part of the sale is, what is it going to be like after I buy this?
Right.
And the more secure the buyer feels before they buy about what it's going to be like after they buy, the better chance you have of closing a deal. The uncertainty of not knowing what it will be like afterwards can stall a deal or even lose a deal for you. So when you are helping your customer know, once you buy this, don't worry, we're still here. We're going to have an onboarding process, and it's on a schedule, and we're going to show that to you. And it's going to start with some training, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to, and it goes on, and then we're going to help you get user adoption. So everybody is using what we sold you, and we'll stay with you until they can use it successfully, right? So the usage doesn't drop off. So if we bring the customer success people in, maybe close to closing the deal, but not right there, but just before that, and help explain, here's how we're going to take care of you. We're taking care of you before you're a customer by learning and understanding and making sure it's a good fit. But then after you're our customer, we're going to take really good care of you too. So I think that's really step one. It's like, get them to understand what it's going to be like after they buy, right? That's step one of retention. Then the day that deal closes, the clock is ticking, right? So step two is, what does that look like? So for the salesperson, they may just stay involved for the very first year of that customer, and an account manager may then transition to that account. And there might be a customer success person that bridges that gap, right? So the customer success person helps the salesperson close the deal and make sure the customer feels completely comfortable with what's going to happen after the deal is closed. Then the customer success person is there to help with the onboarding. The salesperson will be checking in. They don't necessarily need to be there for the onboarding. They could be or could not, but that's happening. And that salesperson might be even meeting other people at the company, meeting with senior executives who aren't involved with the onboarding and giving them assurances, or maybe even connecting them with their own CEO if that's appropriate, so that they can meet and learn and understand even more about the company. So that clock is ticking, and the account executive does their job, the customer success person does their job. And then if there is a handoff, which in many big companies there is, to the account manager, sales, the account executive and the customer success manager and the account manager all together are meeting with the right people at the company and making that transition really smooth. If you don't, and all of a sudden just some new person calls your customer one day, that is not good for retention, right? Like,
so that handoff, that
yeah,
I used to work for a company where we called it a power pass. It's like, it is, you're passing the power from one to another, right? It's a power pass.
And
So
do
you
it well,
that power
right?
pass, and so you don't feel that you're just being dropped. And I do that as well. Like in my own company, I'm the one who does the majority of the sales. But when I pass it on to one of the expert consultants, I'm there on the call to make sure that the transition is being done correctly. And we are constantly revamping our onboarding process because that has to be very smooth. And if that doesn't happen, then you're right. It's like the bow tie, it's kind of like, you go to the final, yeah, we got the close, but now it's when the adventure starts. Now where is the care starts. And I like the idea of starting it early. Any other tips or ideas on how to ensure retention and customer satisfaction? Of course, through amazing delivery, but that's not all. You have to have everything around it in terms of the communication, the interaction. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, companies today, in my opinion, and many others too, are here to serve, right? Our job is to serve. And when we do that well, our businesses thrive. And so do those that we serve. Their businesses thrive. What's the point, right? We're in business to make their business better, selling whatever it is that we sell. So their success is our success. So if you keep in mind that you're there to serve the customer, and your team who's serving the customer is always asking the customer, are we serving you well? What else could we do? What else do you need, right? So that is another piece, right? So again, start early with customer success. Make sure your onboarding and training and user adoption, is really high quality and it really helps them. Make sure they're successful using what you sold them. Staying in touch, transition the power, like you mentioned, like the people are not, this person's going to kind of leave. They might touch base with you, once a quarter or something, but you've got an account manager now that's really going to focus on you, right? And I think it's really important. People say go deep and wide, right? So what happens when we're doing the sale is sometimes we meet 2, 3, 4, or 5 people who are charged with purchasing the thing that we're selling, but they're not the same people afterwards who are involved in actually getting it implemented and making sure there's user adoption. So make sure you meet all the right people for several reasons. One, you want to serve all of them. 2, people leave companies, and if you only have 1 or 2 contacts and they leave, then you're stuck and you're having to make all new contacts, and that just doesn't really work very well.
No, it doesn't. And it's also not just the leave companies, but they also change positions. So if somebody is your main contact, but you do not know anybody else, then the contract that you have, if it's only with your main contact, it can go away, because as we know, as people assume new positions, now they want to also, they're going to be evaluated by something. Might be Cutting costs. Maybe they got that new position because they said they're gonna increase profitability. So all of a
Yes,
sudden, all
right.
the projects that they did not originate go away. So that can also affect retention.
Oh, absolutely. So you want to meet all the right people, and then you want to get your senior executives paired up with their senior executives. So you're stickier all the way through the organization. And let's say some of these middle managers do leave for whatever reason, or maybe they have a reduction in workforce, and they have to let some of them go. You're still positioned at a higher level, or your VP or your CEO is positioned at that higher level in the organization so that you can still serve your customer, right?
That's
So in the
exactly right.
end, I mean, I think keeping the customer in mind, what they want, how they're going to be successful, but then ask them, just ask, how are we doing? What else can we do? Are you able to use the product? What's the user adoption look like? All of those things to make sure that they can be successful. And they'll tell you. And if they're not happy, they'll tell you that too. And then, hallelujah, you get a chance to fix it. But then when they are happy and you have a new product or they grow, they're going to buy more from you. And again, they're going to be happy to make introductions for you if you ask them. So those things become really important and they make sales so much easier when we can sell more to our existing customers and get them to introduce us to others who can buy.
I agree. So in your opinion, whose position it or whose job it is to actually upsell? I mean, at that point, they have an accounts manager. Does it go back to sales when they see an opportunity? What do you suggest to your clients in that area?
Every company does it differently. Some companies don't have account managers anymore and they have the customer success people handling, the customer. That can work too. But typically a customer success manager is not educated as a seller. I mean, you can educate them as a seller, but typically they're not. I think they should be. But if either way, the customer success manager can look out for opportunities and call the salesperson. Or if there is an account manager, the account manager should be in touch on a regular basis, doing business reviews with that company, especially the largest ones, and they can find out when there's an opportunity. But customer success always has their ears to the ground, right? Because they're working with the people who do the work a lot of times. So they have the opportunity to say, hey, I heard they're growing, or I heard they're doing, a reduction in workforce, or I heard they're acquiring another company. And when they hear that stuff, they should be trained to listen for it and to ask questions about it, and then to either let the account executive or the account manager know about that so that that can be pursued.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So referrals, asking for referrals, you mentioned that. Tell us your view of what is the best way for us to ask for referrals?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of start by telling you a little bit of a story. I often ask CEOs and sales leaders, do you get many referrals? Oh yeah, we get referrals. I go, oh, like how many? Oh, we get maybe a couple a year. I'm a couple a year. How about a couple a month? Right? Like, why do you settle for, you know, 2 or 3 referrals a year when you could get 2 or 3 referrals a month, or actually really even more than that? And it's funny because across the board, they'll say, oh yeah, we get referrals. But then when I ask how many, it's barely any percent of their business, right? If you have a great customer base who knows you, loves you, is successful using what you sold them, you should have a ton of referrals. Now, why don't we? Well, part of the reason is because there's no system, there's no process in place to get those referrals on a regular basis, and it's not rewarded in any way. So, salespeople have goals, right? They have a quarterly goal, they have an annual goal, they may have some other metrics like a goal to make a certain amount of phone calls, a goal to go to a certain amount of trade shows, a goal to send a certain amount of emails, right? They have all these metrics, but where's the goal to get referrals? I never see it, right? I'm like, oh, well, so do you have a goal for each salesperson to get a referral? No. Okay, do you reward them for referrals? No. Okay. How are you going to get a behavior that you don't even ask for, right?
Right.
Now, some salespeople who are good and more senior just know to get referrals because it's way easier than cold calling. Why wouldn't you? But young people don't do it and they don't know how to do it. So let's start at the beginning. Number one, set the expectation. From the CEO down, everyone in the company should be expected when it is appropriate and they're in front of the customer and have the opportunity to ask them for an introduction. Now, what does that look like? Well, my gosh, it's so big, right? There's so many things, but let's just take a couple examples. So CEO is sitting with the CEO, everything's going really well. They've done a business review. The sales, rep was there with them. The account manager, whoever conducted the business review, was there with the CEO from their company. So it was a great review. Everything's going well. Someone in that organization, either the CEO or the sales rep, needs to say, we love working with you. Your company's exactly the right kind of company and the right size. And we're growing and looking for other companies just like yours. Who do you know in the industry? What vendors of yours or what customers of yours could use what we do? Great. Would you make an introduction? But you have to practice it or you're not going to do it. And you have to put it on the agenda or you're not going to do it, right? And it has to be the right time. You have to earn the right to ask. If you haven't done a good job, don't ask someone for a referral. My goodness, that would be horrible, right? And you're going to get a big fat no. But if you've earned the right, then ask, right? So a lot of times I want salespeople to be very specific. So that, that's just one situation. You're in a business review and everything's going great and you got the right people there. Ask, right? Just ask.
Yeah.
And then for salespeople on a regular ongoing basis, we each have a set of customers. Now, if we're handing them off to account managers, then account managers have to help us because we've lost touch with some of those customers over time because we're out getting new ones. That's fine. Customer success can help too. But when we hear a great success story from a company, that should be a trigger. Great. Love that. Let's go ask them, can we put that in writing? Would they make a video for us? So now we're asking for a testimonial, but then we're also going to say, and what about this other department or your sister company or your vendors or your partners? Do any of them need, right, what we sell? And would you make an introduction? Now we can be even more specific. And I do work with salespeople on this, is to find a set of look-alike companies and, ones that aren't their main competitors, obviously, because they're not going to want to introduce you to their main competitors, but other companies that peripherally are in their industry that they might know from an industry conference or from a networking event or other ways like that. And you actually say to them, again, thank you for your business. We love working with you. We're growing. We're looking for more companies just like yours. There's 3 companies I've really been dying to get into, and I haven't made any headway going in there cold. I'm wondering if you know anyone at any of these 3 companies, and you give them the name of the company and even the name of the people because you've looked them up on LinkedIn or any, of the millions of tools that give you data today. There's so many, Zoom Info, Seamless AI, there's data everywhere, right? So you come prepared to ask for a specific introduction to someone by name. And then you can say, do you know them well enough to introduce me? Would you feel comfortable? How can I help you introduce me, right? And that works so beautifully if you've earned the right, because you've done a great job and they're successful using what you sold them. So every salesperson should be doing that every day, at least one ask, right? Like, what's so hard about that?
Absolutely. I think it's brilliant. And it's the asking and having it top of mind and rewarding it that is so important.
Yeah. Give them a goal to ask once a week or once a day, whatever you want the goal to be. Start small and then make it more. But once they start getting traction from doing it, they're going to want to do it more, right? And then maybe give them an extra 1% or 2% when it comes from a referral versus cold, So incentivize to do the behavior. And it's so much easier to get an introduction to someone than it is to send them 15 emails and call them 15 times and try to reach them on LinkedIn. I mean, why wouldn't you do it the easy way?
So much easier and so smart. Alice, we can talk forever here because you are so knowledgeable and you are so, again, the chief sales energizer. That's exactly what you are. And it's very obvious. So I'm probably going to have you back as a recurring guest on my podcast because we have so much more to talk about. But before we end off, can you tell our listeners how they can find you, how they can reach out to you if they have more questions, if they want to hear more, learn more, and work with you?
Oh, thank you so much. And I'd love to be on again. We do have a lot to talk about. And because you talk about systems and really everything that I do with sales, when you systematize it and do it consistently, it works. And that's the problem I find in most companies. There's no system, no process, and whatever they're doing, they're not even doing it consistently. So of course you're not going to get the results you want. So it's really important to put that in. So I'm Alice Heiman, and you can find me at aliceheiman.com. Heiman. So it's easy if you spell it right. And then of course you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to connect, I would love to accept your connection, but I want you to give me a note. So use the little button that says add a note and let me know that you heard me here on Addie's show.
Awesome. And we'll include that link and absolutely do that. And Alice, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on this podcast. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.